back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. This time, yet again, we've got Drago Bosnić. He's back with us for our usual weekend chat. How you doing, Drago?
Great being here. And always great talking to you.
Yeah, you're always an interesting person to have a talk with, in the sense that you know how to converse, and you allow me to, interject, cut you off, and all the things that the commenters hate. Please, commenters, we love the hate. It drives the algorithms. If you're new here, hi, this is a comedy show. Drago gets that. During the week, he writes real articles. He's a military analyst and geopolitical. But he's a military analyst and he writes articles during the week. And then on the weekends, he comes to laugh about them with me. That's basically what I realized today before we started recording. He sent me a bunch of stuff, and boy, have we got some funny articles to get to. Borell admits Kiev regime would last mere days without Western support. Now, for people who follow the Ukraine SMO World War III apocalypse, they already know this to be old news. But Drago, do you want to clue people into what Mr. Borell was outlining here?
Yeah, he actually took part in an interview in one of the Spanish media, and he essentially admitted, as you said, all of us know this. It's been obvious since day one. But it's interesting when the Western leaders themselves, or should I say, quote, Marx leaders, in this case, he's just a bureaucrat, essentially. So when they admit this, it's quite interesting, because oftentimes they like to denigrate.
I think you mean technocrat, not bureaucrat.
Yeah. You're right. Even worse, he's a technocrat. So you know how they like to say that Russia is weak and they can't take Ukraine for over a year and so on and so on. But now when they essentially admit something like this, then that makes the previous point quite moot. So the point is, they just when they admit something like that, I always like to take note of it.
Yeah, it's good to keep tabs on all those kind of issues. In the next article you sent along, we're gonna run through some of these rather quickly, because some of them are old news for, like we said, people who are addicted to the apocalypse or World War III to be. I don't know what to call it yet. The special military operation, technically yes, but it's become a lot more than that, considering they're getting fighter jets and tanks, and why not give them nukes too? I'm waiting for the U.S. to donate an aircraft carrier. Until they donate an aircraft carrier, they're not serious about Ukraine winning. Speaking of donations, depleted uranium was delivered by the UK to the Ukrainian regime. Let's call it a regime, by the UK regime, headed by the king. Tell us about depleted uranium, and tell us about this cloud. Is it real?
Yeah, essentially what they're saying is that there are spikes in radiation in Western Ukraine, because the area where this weapons storage or ammo storage was hit is in Western Ukraine. It's around the city of Ternopil, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're claiming, at least, is that, and this is not just Ukrainians, these are various sources, the Russian, Western, Ukrainian, and so on. They're claiming that those depleted uranium shells that were sent by the UK were stored there, and then the FSB was tracking them, and then they decided to blow them up. So that's essentially what happened there. Obviously, depleted uranium has a certain amount of radiation. Obviously, it's lower than the normal uranium, let's call it that way. But it certainly exists, and it's very, very dangerous for people, for humans, as we know, and not just humans, but the nature, animals, everything, essentially. Learned that the hard way in Serbia, because NATO, Freedom and Democracy, used them to remove let's say,
The
autocracy from Serbia.
dictator Slobodan Milosevic with the operation called Merciful Angel, where they angelically spread depleted uranium over us. And as that florist that both you and I listened to on Telegram, Hawkin the florist, he was mentioning also that there was like Italians who were handling the munitions who also got anus cancer, I believe, rectal cancer, something of the sort, and then they sued their own governments for being affected by these munitions.
They won. Yeah, they won.
Yeah,
And
they won, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, their courts admitted, like the court system of a NATO nation, which is Italy in this case, admitted that DU is very dangerous. So like we could use that as a basis to sue NATO as an organization because they've invested a lot of money into claiming that DU is not dangerous for us or anyone, But they've paid their own soldiers who got sick because of that. So, I mean, which one is true?
DU was all the rad in the 90s and the early 2000s. The US used it not only in the former Yugoslavia, but mostly Serbia and Kosovo, but also in Kuwait when they were quote-unquote liberating Kuwait from the evil Saddam, who they let go in. But that's a bunch of different conspiracy theories that we won't get into today. The Kuwaiti government had them clean up like all the places where the DU was used. Something like a meter of sand was removed and shipped to Kentucky or like somewhere where it's like stored. So there are solutions, but
But they're not very practical. I mean, like sand, right? Because beneath sand there's more sand, but you can't do it in a country which has fertile soil because you're going to destroy the soil and like you're going to create not like much less damage than already exists with because of the DU. So I don't know. I mean, and there's an interesting theory. We might call it conspiracy theory, but a friend of mine. He told me that like the U.S. starts invasions or massively uses DU every 4 years because that's the cycle that it takes them to like remove these from their nuclear power plants. And interestingly, like it was in 1991, like they bombed Iraq, and then in 1995 they bombed like Republika Srpska, which is the Serbian entity in Bosnia, and in 1999 they bombed us. 2003, they bombed Iraq again. 2007, they like escalated this again in Iraq. And 2011, again, Libya. So like every 4 years, truly it is like every 4 years.
That's nuts.
Start something.
That's nuts. Like, I'm sorry, but that's nuts. Like, it's the first time that I'm hearing this, and this is like unbelievable.
Like all the dates are like completely like in line with this theory. And when a friend of mine told me this, I was completely like I never thought about it really, I never thought about these things. And when he told me, like, it was really nuts, as you say.
We all know the nuclear energy industry is basically an offshoot of the weapons industry, as opposed to what most people think it's the other way around. So, like, that doesn't surprise me at all that they're using, more of the, let's say, leftovers of the industry. Oh, snap. We've got these articles out of order. Okay, there we go. The Kinjal Strike. Kinjal hypersonic missile destroys Kiev's US-made Patriot air defense system. So the Patriot, it got like stabbed by a Russian dagger.
Yep, pretty much.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, like we already mentioned this in the previous video, but this one is interesting because I had to write it because, the Kiev regime forces, they claim they shot down 6 of them. So like in one night. And the funny part is they fired like 32 interceptors, which are like over $5 million, like each, like 5.3 million, something like that. So they wasted like over $150 million worth of interceptors and didn't shoot down anything. And they obviously they claim they shot down 7, but of course there's zero proof, just like on the previous one. So on that, like concrete bomb that Klitschko was holding, claiming it was the hypersonic weapon like that the Russians fired. Obviously, it's ridiculous unless Klitschko is 7 feet tall or so, or actually something like that. I'm not sure. So like it's crazy, like because the missile itself is like I think it's up to like 7 times longer than the thing that Klitschko was holding. So it's funny, but I just wanted to report on it because obviously I wanted to present the points that negate the idea that you can shoot this thing down with a Patriot.
I gotta ask before you get too serious. This here, I'm guessing it's artist impression.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Because like I didn't see this photo, and this looks too artist impression-y. Somebody took creative liberty. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I do photos, articles. That's what the editor does. But yeah, that one is not real. Although I had people like ask me like, where did you get this photo? Like I didn't even post it. So.
I was gonna also ask you maybe to explain to people, because like when we see the Patriot missile system, we usually see exactly just this launcher, but we don't see the other parts of the system. I'm not even gonna try and dig it up because it'll probably take too long. But I have a picture. Maybe I'll post it in the channel later of the actual layout of the Patriot system. People can look it up. But would you like to walk through how it is that one missile could have damaged 5 pieces of the Patriot system?
Well, like I'm pretty sure like it's not just one missile. I think what the Russians probably did with the Kinjal, they probably took out the multi-mode radar because that's the most important part of the whole system. Like that's basically the eyes of the whole system. Like having missiles without the radar is like giving a blind guy a rifle, so he can't do anything with it, right? So
time out. Is that the radar that's like limited to like 180 degrees out of 3, or like even less viewing angle?
Like 120 degrees, and that's like the most that it can cover. That's why like you need multiple batteries to cover a 360 degrees area. And a single S-300 battery from the Soviet times, from the 70s and 80s, can do that by itself. Like it doesn't need like 5 batteries to cover 360 degrees. On the other hand, like you need multiple Patriot batteries to do the same. And like each battery is way inferior to the S-300. So, I mean, the Patriot system, it's extremely overhyped. And I'm not saying this just like to denigrate American technology. It's not that. It's just that the Western style of warfare, it's about air superiority. So they don't really focus that much on air defenses, ground-based air defenses. So like we cannot expect the Patriot to be a good system simply because like it's not a priority for the West.
The other thing is that like they have they're meant to work as integrated air defense, in the sense that like AWACS flying above them and a bunch of other sensors that feed it information, as opposed to an S-300, which is more of like an independent kind of like put it on an island and it'll be okay type of thing.
Exactly. Like it's way different. Like it doesn't as many assets to support it as opposed to Patriot.
All right. The next topic that I want to bring up, or the next article that you sent along, these are out of order, but they are kind of related. The actual state of Kiev's regime's air defenses, military experts' opinion. Is that your opinion, or is that you talking about somebody's opinion?
That's me interviewing the Serbian air defense, like retired air defense officer. Right. He was. I'm not supposed to say his name. I mean, I know the guy personally. He wanted to say anonymous. Obviously, I also wanted to make just to make clear, like his real name is not Wolf. Obviously, like it's not a Serbian last name. That was his wartime call sign, Vuk, which means wolf in Serbian. So that's why we use that as his name. And essentially, like what that interview boils down to is that the Kiev regime is running out of Soviet-era missiles, air defense missiles, or SAM systems. So, like now, replaced by inferior Western and other systems. And as the colonel himself said, it's going to be a logistical nightmare because you're going to have various systems which are very different and work in very different environments and like very different ways. Like having over Ukraine, and that's going to be much harder to operate and to use than the S-300, because the Soviet Union actually had very, very good logistics with the S-300, and it was like very unified. So it was relatively easy for Ukrainians to operate these systems, and now they're going to have the opposite with all these Western like salad of systems, as the colonel said.
Yeah, and I've noticed that like even the Gepard is like out of service in Europe.
Yep.
And then they gave it to Ukraine.
Yep.
It's like they're giving them their own like tech. It's really sad, man. It's really sad.
Yeah, it is, because like a soldier has to get into it and die. Like he has to operate the thing. It cannot be like used remotely. Unlike the recent Russian air defense systems, like the S-350, which was used like in full AI mode recently. So like you don't even have to risk the lives of soldiers with new systems. And with these old ones, like they're way less capable, and like you risk the lives of soldiers. So as you said, like it's really sad, but I think it's up to Ukrainians to, to try to, let's say, rebel against this, because otherwise they're just going to bleed to death collectively, unfortunately.
We don't condone any calls to action.
Yeah.
We are a pacifist YouTube comedy channel.
Sure.
Everything that sounds like a call to action is sarcasm. We're very lazy here. What was I gonna say? Wait, let me see here. Oh yeah, you mentioned Ukrainian air defenses. And you compared it to like Russian autonomous air defenses. I got two sub questions. One, which autonomous air defense? What are you talking about? Tell us the whole story. And number two, what is your take on that recently released or like enrolled, however it's put in military terms, the air-droppable air defense that's on the like little chassis that the Russians came out with? I can't remember what its designation. You know what I'm talking about?
Maybe like Cessna U, right?
I have no idea what it's called. It's something that like within the last 2 weeks they released information about like a new air defense system that's based like, it's something like a Panzer, but it's like much smaller and it's air droppable, and it's like on one of those little chassis that they made for the VDV.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. That's like that's going to be used by the VDV. Obviously, it's like it's significant on a tactical level, like not on a strategic, like with S-400 or S-5. But it is significant because like when you deploy units like the VDV, which is like the airborne assault infantry, they usually lack the direct air defenses, because like these things are too heavy or like too inconvenient to like airdrop them into an area. So yeah, this is what makes it very, very convenient for them. And in the beginning of the SMO, like the VDV had the bulk of the casualties, like in the first couple of months, because they were like the spearhead of the SMO when they were trying to do that, like to conduct all this without using way too much artillery, like they're doing now.
And the other question: when was that AI air defense done?
Yeah. That was like during this week, or at least like this is where when they released the information. I'm not sure like when exactly they used it. They didn't release like all the details about it, but it's one of the latest like strategic air defense systems of the Russian military. It's the S-350, which is like specifically designed particularly against cruise missiles, which are very difficult to defend against because they fly very low. And this system was able to operate completely autonomously, like without anyone interfering. And I think this was one of the major projects of the Russian military, which didn't get a lot of public attention because like everybody's focused on the S-500 or I don't know, like the space-based weapons and so on and so on. But this is very important because essentially they're going to reduce the number of soldiers needed to operate such systems. Essentially, the soldier will become controller. Like he will just be there to control the situation in case the AI, has issues or it can't work properly or anything like that. But for the most part, the system can operate completely autonomously. Like it can shoot down targets without anyone else participating.
Okay, moving from the technical and strategic to the global and geopolitical. America faces major hurdles trying to form Asia-Pacific Nato. What?
Yeah.
I thought everybody loved America, man.
Yeah, everybody loves America. Like the idea that somebody doesn't is obviously Russian propaganda, and we're not going to condone that, I guess. So, jokes aside, like specifically, this story is about South Koreans who are quite upset with America, like pushing them into this like anti-Chinese coalition because South Koreans, like despite their obvious ideological differences with China, they find China to be a very important market for them because it's an endless market which keeps growing and developing, and also like it's a very strong market for the K-pop, which I find ludicrous to be honest, but still like that's what the Chinese people like, and it's very lucrative for the South Koreans to engage in that, and if they openly like go against China. That market is essentially cut off from them. So, and South Korea has zero reasons to go against China. Like I can understand their like animosity towards North Korea, but with China, they don't have a reason to do that, and they will just be used as a springboard by the U.S. to like conduct its own like power projection in East Asia, and it's not going to do any good to South Korea. So that's why they're fighting against this.
And the perfect segue: U.S. mulling sanctions for the whole Arab League because they normalized relations with Syria. When you sent me this and I read it, I was like, wow, this has to be the joke of the day, man. Like, how can they even contemplate something like this realistically? Like, please tell us what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, well, all I can say is like, good luck to the U.S. trying to sanction 500 million people, which they bombed for the last 20 years. So I guess they're going to be extremely happy about this. I mean, the Arabs. So I mean, it's insane. It's just insane because the Arab League is one of the largest regional organizations in the world. So
it's also known as Middle East and North Africa, basically, the MENA region.
Yeah, just that. Like only that. Like only 500 million people living there, and like being like probably the most strategic place in the world because like it's so geopolitically important that like it cannot be overstated essentially, and we could see it ourselves like with all these American wars happening in the region, basically from Libya to Afghanistan essentially, although like Afghanistan is not part of the obviously it's not an Arab country, it's not part of the Arab, but like it's part of the region essentially, of the MENA region. So like how are they planning to conduct such a thing? I really don't understand. Like, I really don't understand how. And it's just going to create another superpower enemy because this organization would be essentially a superpower if it were a country. So they're going to create another superpower.
All I can say is it seems that the sanctions worked so well against Russia that they can't wait to impose more sanctions against more powerful and more numerous nations
entities,
and countries. It's entities basically. It's insane. Like the politics these last 2 years, well, maybe even 4 if you take the whole World Health Organization thing into consideration, have been crazy. What's been going on, but so they wanna sanction people that they bombed. And speaking of people that they bombed, the next article you sent along was this. Brown University studies find U.S. post 9/11 aggression. Did they actually label it aggression? Killed displaced up to 60. That was you. Oh, okay, yeah, good. Good. It is aggression. It's like passive-aggressive aggression.
Yeah.
That turns into like sociopathic, abusive aggression
Killing
at
spree.
times. um, we're against marital violence here, but we're definitely pro self-defense. Well, I am anyway. The Working Brother does not share any of the views of any of the people who come on the show, by the way. The Working Brother has his own views that are beyond all jokes that are said on this show. Yeah, back to the study. So was this a U.S. professor or like a Russian plant in this Brown University? Where's Brown University? Is this like Brown, Kazakhstan? The Moscow campus of Brown University. Is that where the study is from? No, tell us seriously about the study.
Yeah, but all jokes aside, it was a study, essentially it was the Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs. They're one of their institutes that did the study within the scope of the Cost of Wars project, and. I mean, the sources they've used are up for debate. Like, obviously, there could be other and better sources, but what they used was, I think, it shouldn't be ignored because they found that like up to 4.6 million people were killed or died as a result of the post 9/11 wars and aggressions and invasions, and there were up to 16 million people who were displaced. So, and they themselves
included. Yourself and myself included. I wonder if they actually counted us.
This was like post 9/11, so maybe not in this case. Like if we were to count all the post 1991 invasions, that would be worse. I guess this number would be way worse. But let's say like
only post 9/11. That slipped me. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's like if we count other invasions, like for as long as we can go back, it's essentially like, and this is what I said in the article, it's essentially like 93 to 95% of the time of the U.S. existence has been in wars. Like only like 13 to 17 years, depending like on various studies of this, has been peace in the U.S. out of 247 since they've been founded as a country. So. Like it's insane. Like the least we could say is that it's insane. So I guess we should have to invent another word for it. So it's like the warfare country of the world. Like there's no other country on the planet that has been in wars for longer in terms of like how long it has existed. So this study has been conducted in a way that I think was flawed. Because like it didn't take everything into account, and they mentioned themselves like that they considered that the number of direct victims has been 1 million people, like in all these wars combined. But obviously, like there are studies which confirm that only Iraq had 1 million victims of the U.S. freedom and democracy, let's say. So I guess these numbers could be way worse if we were to like conduct a study that's non-Western. If we were to use only like Middle Eastern and other sources, I guess these numbers could be like several times higher, like both killed and displaced.
Corruption.
Yeah, Russian corruption.
No, Russian propaganda about
corruption. Propaganda about.
Yeah. Tell us about who is this guy? I've never seen this guy. What's his name?
That's the president. Supreme Court of Ukraine, and like he was supposed to like enforce law, which was supposed to fight corruption. And what the Ukrainian SBU found is that he himself has actually took millions of dollars in bribes yeah, obviously they're lying. The guy is honest as he could possibly be. So. But I mean, there's no corruption in the Kiev regime. It's the most transparent and honest regime in the history of mankind. So obviously, this is fake news that I posted.
We actually touched upon that We actually touched upon that in the most recent interview that I did with George. I'll leave a link somewhere here. And basically they came out with an app, the DIIA app, which is basically meant to fight corruption in Ukraine. I'll leave a link. Find it there. Sorry to interrupt, but I had to, because like we just talked about it yesterday, now you're telling me that there's another scandal in the midst of the Ukrainian government. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, that was essentially. Yeah, but this is a very. I think this could be like used as a good way to explain another article which we'll talk about. It's about the potential mutiny in the Ukrainian military. It's actually connected to this because the soldiers themselves, they're like essentially they're furious at their government because they're dying while the politicians are like hoarding these enormous quantities of money and like storing it outside of Ukraine and like essentially getting it out of Ukraine and leaving the people with a debt, and of course also sending the people to die. And there's been one more thing which I found out today, and I actually found it out from a friend of mine. She told me that the Ukrainians, like the Zelensky regime now, is mulling the legalization of the same-sex marriage in Ukraine. And like the soldiers are just furious with this because most of the soldiers are nationalists, right, like extremely right-wing. So for them, this is like a stab in the back because they're fighting, you know, in the front lines, and you know, behind them, instead of like taking care of, you know, their families and so on, the government is essentially like Westernization, which is going to destroy.
Bending a knee to Satan, bending a knee to Satan and the democratic European Union liberal values, basically. So you're saying that the looming mutiny is basically because of gay rights, not because of other things?
Yeah. I mean, joke. It is a major factor because, like, if I was supposed to die for my country, fighting for the rights of whatever those people are called, or they call themselves, I'm not going to do it because, like, I don't want my society to turn into an American one or whatever. You know, some of these Western societies, which are essentially like destroying themselves, like they can do it, they're free to do it, but obviously I would be extremely against.
To put it in YouTube newspeak that's acceptable, you would not fight to defend values that you do not believe in.
Exactly. Like I would fight those values. Like seriously speaking, I would fight those values myself because obviously, like if I want a future for my kids or like anyone for my nation, I would be extremely against it because these values have been nothing but a disaster for Western countries. So like, I mean, if they want to live that way, sure, go ahead. Just like, don't come to me and try to convince me that these things are normal because they're obviously, I don't consider them normal. And like the vast majority of other people around the world don't. So like, I think this is what many Ukrainians are realizing now, and like seeing all the corruption and seeing how they're being sent to the meat grinder, like just for the info wars. Like what they did in Belgorod is a perfect example of that. So they lost Bakhmut, or like Artyomovsk now, as it's called, and like they needed some, you know, big media show to present to the world how they're winning and, you know, occupying parts of Russian territory and so on. Like, and all these soldiers that were sent to this operation got killed or wounded, and like they accomplished literally nothing. So, like, I guess a lot of soldiers just don't want to be sent to certain death, which is why they are probably like mulling the possibility of a mutiny.
I rearranged the order of the articles that we're going to talk about because you brought that up, and yeah, that you also sent this along, which is the F-16s, which are now confirmed, which were always, you know, gonna get there sooner or later. And you mentioned this about, you know, how it's gonna prolong the Ukrainian suffering. But before you get to like the meat of the article, can you give people an idea, because you are a military expert, about the F-16 itself? It's from the 70s, 76, 78, something like that. And what
Yeah, yeah.
F-16s are they getting? Are they getting like the new ones? I don't think they're getting the new ones. And who's going to fly these F-16s? Tell us something about
Obviously,
these.
like obviously they're not getting the new ones because like if they were to get the latest version and this version gets shot down, which is extremely possible or extremely likely, then it's going to ruin the sales of this system of the specifically like the newest variant, which is the Block 7072, which Taiwan ordered, and like it's been waiting for them for I don't know like 2 or 3 years now, and obviously they're going to wait for 2 more as far as I know. Because Lockheed Martin is behind in production. So because of Ukraine, essentially, because they're like sending a lot of weapons and they're using a lot of their production facilities to send this to the AFU. Well, as for your question for the F-16, the idea that it's like this Wunderwaffe or wonder weapon, as they say, it's ridiculous. Because first of all, it's a lightweight design, like that was essentially like contemplated as a lightweight version of the F-15 that was supposed to like help it, just like the F-35 was supposed to help the F-22. So this like jet, it was I think the design work was started in the late '60s, which would put it like at 60 years old. And like it was inducted into service in the like the later part of the '70s. So like it's hardly like a wonder weapon, and it was used against largely helpless countries. Like we couldn't count Serbia, which was invaded and like attacked in 1999, as a good opponent, because like we had like a lot of our jets were barely working and were barely flying, and like most of their systems were not working at all, and we were up against an enemy that was like way more numerous and way more technologically advanced. So like
when you say way more numerous, it doesn't even cover it. Like yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that like I think the Serbian or Yugoslav Air Force at the time had like something like maybe 10 or 15 MiGs, whereas they were going up against 1,500 aircraft in the air at any time above
exactly
Yugoslav airspace. So they were not like outnumbered. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1.
Exactly. Like, and not just outnumbered, but like most of those jets were fourth generation. And even though like our MiG 29s were like officially fourth generation, most of their avionics were like export
grade,
export grade, and like we couldn't like compete with them, like with Western air forces in any way, because like for over almost 50 years they were preparing for a war with the Soviet superpower, and us fighting them obviously is not fair. So essentially, like using that conflict or any conflict where the U.S. Invaded a country as like a parameter to see how the F-16 would fare in Ukraine is ridiculous, because they would be going against heavyweight Russian jets like the Su-35S or the MiG-31BM, which is like the highest flying and the fastest fighter jet in the world. And it's been like that for like, I don't know, 40 years since it's been inducted into service. So like, I think the flight ceiling for the F-16 is about 16,000 meters to 17,000 meters. Well, for the MiG-31, it's almost 25. So like it's ridiculous to even compare it. Like the MiG-31 would be shooting down not one, but like a squadron of F-16s before they could even see it. And doing it like against way more powerful jets like the Ukrainian Su-27, which is also a heavyweight jet, and it's more advanced and like a better jet than the F-16, especially those that the Ukrainians will be getting, because they themselves like will not be getting the latest version, as you said, but those which were discarded by Western air forces. So they will be sending their pilots to certain death, essentially.
And let's not even mention the fact that all of these jets that are taken from everybody, are going to be, replenished by new F-22s and whatever in the future for contracts that,
Yeah.
are going to be
Yeah, like
forced upon all of these donor countries, basically.
yeah, yeah. There's no way that this has anything to do with the profits of the American military-industrial complex. I think that would be like fake news and conspiracy theories.
Yeah. It's good this is a comedy show. Sticking with the comedy theme, Sweden wants to leave the European Union. What?
Yep.
They got their fill of migrants. They don't want any more. They're like, no, we don't want any more migrants.
Yes.
we had enough.
Yeah,
is that it?
That would like be the whole point of the article. These they call them like
I got it on the head. Like I hit the nail on the head for real. I was being funny. That's really what it's about. It's about migrants.
Well, it is like part of it. Part of it only like a part of it is about politics, like internal EU politics. But like migrants are certainly one of the reasons for this. Like essentially these social democrats, or like Sweden Democrats as the party is called, they're like considered extremists and right wing and so on and so on, because of their stance that Swedish population should not be replaced by anyone else. Can you imagine that? Like these
right wing doesn't mean anything anymore. Like neither does left wing. So you got to be like a little more specific. Are they like the good right wing who are like pro self defense and stuff like that, or are they like the extreme right wing or right wing, which is like people who are Republican?
They're being accused of being extremist and right wing because they don't want immigration. Like they want. Swedish people to remain the majority of, or at least like the main population of Sweden, which obviously is extremist for these woke-tards, or should I say like freedom and democracy people. So they're being accused of this. And the interesting thing is these Sweden Democrats, this party, that's how what they're called, Sweden Democrats. They are like they're the key to having the current government in power. Like if they decide to quit supporting the government is going to fall. So essentially, they're using this as a leverage to force the Swedish government to negotiate a better deal with the EU. And part of this deal is to like remove the clause from the Swedish constitution that they are a member of the EU, and like to create like the institutions to make sure that Sweden can get out of the European Union at any point. So like they're not really like, they don't really want to leave the EU with nothing. It's just that they want to use this to like essentially get funds and concessions from the EU in return of not leaving the EU. So Brussels is
that sounds like a dream that's never going to happen, because from what I know about EU law, it's like the California hotel. Once you're there, you can never leave. Hotel California.
Yeah, but
from what I understand, like it's impossible to leave the EU. From what I understand, even like Britain now, it's officially not part of the EU, but they're still like doing all the European economic stuff. And they still have the same laws that they had before. So once you're in, I don't think Sweden has a chance.
Yeah, but it depends like on how many countries will decide to like use the like their own internal legislation to fight off the Brussels technocrats, because obviously
like Hungary.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say Hungary. Like Hungary is fighting them because the Hungarian internal law is completely anti-EU. Like they're not allowing Soros to like raise their kids, in the right in the real values way, as they say it. So like this is like a no-go for the EU. Like you cannot do this, and the EU is going to sanction you. And they wanted to do this in Poland, but U.S. pressure on Brussels, stopped this, because obviously, like this rabid Polish Russophobia is the reason why they can do this without, getting punished for it. But if they weren't like that Russophobic, they would actually have the fate of Hungary. Like they would be sanctioned by the EU and like presented as this rogue EU state. So I guess like the more conservative the EU member is, the less like likely they will be to follow all these EU laws, and it's going to be impossible for the EU itself to impose laws everywhere, because obviously like different countries have different sets of laws because of the way their society works. And Eastern Europe is, although like it's getting more liberal, unfortunately, like it's gonna fight back against these things, especially in the future, especially as the West itself becomes more like rabidly liberal or crazy liberal.
Sweden pulling out of the EU. Who would have thunk it? Considering we're talking about pull-out game, let's talk about your last article that you sent. The U.S. models pulling out from New START. New START is that weapons limiting nuclear armament thing, right? Like the thing that's supposed to stop us from World War III.
Exactly, like the last one. And although like Russia suspended its participation in this, like they never left it, and they said, Putin himself said that Russia will continue abiding by the limits of this treaty, regardless of the fact that the treaty is not like the treaty is not canceled; it's just suspended, which means parts of it are not being implemented. And like the major part of it is like the mutual inspections between the U.S. and Russia, where the Russians would send their inspectors to the U.S. and vice versa to check if what the other side is saying is true. Like if they're not like having a bunch of nukes somewhere else. I mean, obviously you can always do it. It's just that it's very expensive, and you know it's very inconvenient to try to hide it when you can just like do it publicly. So the point is, the U.S. wants to completely cancel the treaty, which would like take away all the legal constraints of expanding their nuclear arsenal, and obviously like this would bring us back to the 80s, where like there were 50,000 nukes in the Soviet Union and like 27,000 nukes in the US, and so on, which is like way more, like several times more than the entire arsenal of the world today.
But is it just changes to the arsenal, or is it also changes to the doctrine of usage?
Like if you change the limits of the arsenal, then the doctrine of usage changes too, because like while the limits are in place, the doctrine of usage is deterrence. But if you remove the limits, then the doctrine of usage could become first strike. And first strike is like when you attack another country which has nuclear weapons, and in order to like be able to do it successfully, you're going to need more nukes than they have, because obviously you don't know where all the nukes are. So like this is essentially what you said. Like you said it in the beginning. This is pushing us to World War III as like nothing else we've ever seen, because like if considering the hostility between the U.S. and Russia at this point, it's highly unlikely they will ever decide to like negotiate another deal to replace this one. So like it's like a rabbit hole, like leading us down to World War III.
So on that happy note, I think we are done covering this week's news.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Everybody who stuck around, thank you. Drago, thank you for stopping by. Here's some music to take us out. And everybody, don't forget, keep calm, wait for Russians. I'm gonna keep pushing that. Maybe that's why YouTube took down my other video. We'll see. I hope they don't take this one down. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, check out the links. There'll be links to Drago's channel as well. See you soon, everyone.